Hi guys, my name is Sukaja. Welcome back to my booktube channel. In this video, I am going to talk to you about three very special books that I happened to read in the month of October. So October was a really good reading month for me, and I want to start by talking about the first book that I read in October, which I definitely enjoyed to an extent. This book is The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. Eowyn grew up in Alaska and has a creative writing degree. So she wrote this novel, which is about a couple, Jack and Mabel. Jack and Mabel moved to Alaska in the 1920s in the hopes of starting afresh and leaving behind whatever American lives they had lived previously. That was at a time when Alaska was still a relatively new land that was undiscovered. It was still a lot of wilderness, and it took some guts for people to move there. And Jack and Mabel, they just wanted a fresh start. And unfortunately, they weren't able to have any children. So they decided to, move away because people in their social circles ostracized them. Mabel needs for her mental peace to start afresh, and Jack agrees, and they're a very loving couple. And one day they're just having fun in the snow in front of their cabin, which is at a very deserted location where the town is a few miles away. Jack is a farmer, and he is trying to make a living from farming and is still cultivating the land, which takes a lot of time. Mabel is a homemaker for most part and is very good at baking pies. And one day both of them just forget about their worries and the fact that it's so difficult to get a harvest out, because in the cold winter months the land becomes frozen over and it's very difficult to grow anything. He's still trying to understand the land and isn't having any luck, but one day they just decide to forget about their worries and sort of have fun because it starts snowing for the very first time. They begin to create a snowman, which turns out to be in the shape of a girl. And Jack and Mabel, they get lost in this activity of creating a snowman and end up putting a shawl and a bunch of things onto her. And then when they wake up in the morning, the snowman is no more. Suddenly they can see a little girl wearing the red shawl that they put over the snowman in the woods. So begins the story where this child comes to life and is born out of snow and represents the snow and nature and is a girl of the wilderness and has received no formal education but is around 6 or 7 years old. And she comes into their lives, she changes their lives for the better, basically gives them what they never had, the experience of being a father and mother to a child. But at the same time, this comes with its own pros and cons. So there is a dark side to this. And this is a book of fantasy and historic fiction. It is set in the 1920s in Alaska, and it has wonderful descriptions of the wilderness. Eowyn Ivey is definitely a good writer. And if you like reading books which are well written, I recommend this. Plot does get a little dramatic and over the top towards the second half. So while I enjoyed the beginning and I really felt like I couldn't put it down throughout, it was fast paced and the characters were well rounded. I enjoyed all of that, but towards the end, it does get a little dramatic, and the kind of decisions and where the story goes, I felt it was a little over the top. It became a Hallmark movie of sorts, let's just say. So if you're okay with that and you're able to suspend disbelief the way I did and manage to still enjoy the book, then I recommend picking this up. Overall, I would rate this 4 out of 5 stars. So that's A Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey for you guys. I am now going to talk about the next book that I read last month, and that is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. This is definitely another 4 out of 5 star read for me. Amor Towles is a very good writer indeed. It is at 468 pages, and I went through this in quite a flash because it was hard to put down. Initially, there were parts that felt a little dense, so I recommend that you take it slow and savor this book. It is definitely the kind of book that makes you feel good, and it feels like a warm hug. So this is the story about a man. His name is Count Alexander Rostov, and he lives in Russia, in Moscow. He is suddenly stripped of his title because it was in 1922 when Russia was going through a lot of social change, and they decided to bring down the aristocracy. And because he wrote a certain poem which became very controversial, he was exiled and asked to be under house arrest in a hotel called the Metropole. And he is asked to renounce his suite, renounce all of his possessions, and he is stripped of his title as well, and he becomes overnight a regular ordinary person. Despite all of this happening and him being sent to live in a room on the 6th floor in an attic room of the hotel, despite all of these things and having lost all his possessions, he's still a very optimistic person, and this optimistic attitude of his is what helps him live his life and just not think about the future. I absolutely love the character, and he's done in such a believable manner that I felt that such people do exist in real life, and it is such a refreshing book. It really reinstills your faith in humanity, and it makes you feel like the world isn't such a bad place after all. So if you want a very good quarantine read, one that will help you forget about all the stuff going on in the world, and I recommend delving into this. It tells you a lot about the Russian political situation, the Russian Revolution, how that affected the people and the lives of commoners and people who worked in the hotel, all of that. What is interesting is how a lot of characters come into the lives of the Count, and he touches them in ways that no one would have foreseen at the start of the book, and his character develops and he grows, and there's so much growth. And when a character grows and becomes something that we never imagined he would be, that is a very fulfilling and wholesome story there. If you would like that sort of book, then pick this up. Do stick on, even though you sometimes feel it's slightly getting boring. Still stick on to it, because the end, the payoff is really worth it, and it will definitely make you feel like the whole journey was really worth it, which is how I felt about this book. I recommend that you read this. Let me know if you're deciding to pick any of these up in the comments. The third book that I read in the month of October is Lanny by Max Porter. This is a book that has been longlisted for the Booker Prize in 2019. Max Porter is a renowned poet in England, and this book is about a little village which is not very far away from London. This is about the character Lanny, who is a very innocent, very young boy, who is somebody who personifies everything good in life. He personifies the beauty of life and the innocence of childhood. All of that is captured really well. This book is written in verse and is not something which has well-defined dialogues. You don't know which characters are speaking and when. It's a very different sort of book in that sense, and I would recommend you reading it because of the experimental style of writing that it has. And at the same time, you will still get a glimpse into the life of Lanny, because there are four main characters: Pete, Papa Toothworth, and his parents, Robert, and his mother. Basically, she's a failed actress who is not the most positive person, and most of the people in the book aren't very positive. They all have a lot of negativity, and the village itself, there is this man, Papa Toothworth, who is a ghost and is somebody who has haunted the village for centuries, and this ghost is suddenly intrigued by Lanny and wants to do what it can to sort of get to the boy. So I would recommend reading this, definitely. It's definitely a great book club read. There are a lot of dimensions to this book, and within 200 pages, the author has managed to pack so much that there's so much to dissect and so much to discuss. Who were the bad people and all of that, like this is a kind of book that melds poetry, literary fiction, and thriller together, because there's so much going on. It does make you sit at the edge of your seat, wanting to read quicker than you imagined you want to read this book. It's that kind of book, but at the same time, it does have an alienating quality to it, which means if you aren't familiar with these kind of books where, the genre and the style is slightly different when it comes to writing, you might feel a little lost. But don't get bogged down by the verse and the way in which the book is structured. Don't get bogged down by that. Just take it at its face value and read through in one sitting, and I think you'll definitely have something to say at the end, and you'll definitely feel like there was some takeaway. For the plot alone and for the idea and conceptualization of the story, I would give this book 3 stars. And again, I feel like the author put in a lot of effort in figuring out what words and what expressions would encapsulate an idea in the best possible manner. So each sentence was thought about and put in there, which is why I would give it 4 stars out of 5. The only thing that let me down was the fact that it can be a little alienating, but it is a book that demands attention and demands a view, just like A Gentleman in Moscow. Both those books demand the undivided attention of readers in order to be experienced to their fullest. This is definitely a work of art, and definitely something that pays tribute to art as a form. It basically talks about artists and how the world today is structured in a way that does not facilitate the growth of free-spirited humans. We live in a world that curbs expression, that curbs beauty, that deems artists as mad people, and that deems anything outside of the norm, any child or person outside of the norm, can be seen as a threat to society, can be seen as something self-destructive. And all of those things are brought into play so perfectly in this book. He raises so many questions that are worth debating about. So that is why I recommend reading Lanny, and I recommend rereading it as well. If you had any thoughts about these 3 books, I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. And you can find me on Instagram. I am known as the Bookish Bulletin. If you're interested in following me over there, I would love that. Also, give the video a like if you liked it, and if you found this discussion interesting, please share it. Please give me a subscribe. I would really appreciate it. In the meantime, stay sane, stay safe, and I will see you soon with my next video. Bye.